Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Leadership in Politics. With this time is with Dr. Abraham and Dr. Diane. It's a special celebration of Dr. Gilda Carle new book. And who is better to celebrate than her best friend, Dr. Diane? So she is co-hosting this specific episode with me.
Well, thank you, Abe. It's exciting to be here. I mean, usually we talk about all kinds of things, but this is a unique thing where we're co-hosting. And so thank you for inviting me. And I'm excited since, as you mentioned, Dr. Gilda and I are very good friends. And I was very excited to see she has a new book out. And for those of you who know, she's the relationship expert. She's also the communication, media, everything else expert. So, I am so excited for your book, Gilda. I know that this was a long time coming because you've been working on this and we've been talking about this for a while, you and I, since especially through COVID, you've been working very hard. And we've been talking a lot. We've done a lot of little videos about all the different chapters. And just give me a backstory. What made you think about writing this?
I saw the whole country was in lockdown in one way or another. And for the white collar workers, you know, the blue collar workers were out there, thank goodness, for all of us. But the white collar workers were having a particularly horrible time. And I was reading their stories about all of a sudden, guess what? We are all on TV. They had never been trained. I've been doing media coaching for decades with top executives and celebrities and authors and politicians. So I've been doing this and I never put it down in writing because I was always talking about relationships and I was seeing how much pain they were in. And I knew I had answers to their pain and they were not going to pay. Well, traditionally, we saw that how I earned my living was I would go into companies and I would train their executives. I ran speakers bureau training for a lot of these people, executives, presidents of companies, huge companies. I was on Wall Street doing this. I did this for years and years and years, but there's always, you know, you find a lot of people out there who were former journalists who are now doing media training because journalism does have a shelf life and you fall off the shelf and you go into naturally what you know. But my perspective is different.
So welcome, Dr. Gilda. Such a nice introduction. We're happy for you. We appreciate you. And I also welcome Dr. Diane. Thank you for coming and co-hosting this. This is a special and it's an honor for me as well. So the question to you really, like when you were talking, exchanging these ideas with Dr. Diane, and you're an expert in relationships. So it seems to me what you're creating here with this book, you're creating a relationship between wannabes or leaders, wannabe in media, and you gave them not only one technique, but 66 or 67 techniques. And you call them amplifiers. Amplifiers.
I never do anything. I never color inside the box. I never.
So tell me a little bit about the book itself, where these ideas came from, because these ideas are not just an idea. They are ideas where really actually play a part. So tell us.
Well, when I realized I needed from the heart, I needed to write this book to help people. When I realized that, I went to the bottom of my drawers and cabinets and I started to cull my notes, teaching graduate MBA communications courses, my notes from all the work I did in corporate America years ago and even currently. I intermixed all of that. And of course, the pop culture. I have been on television shows and in the book, I purposely show segments of shows I have been on and I talk about them screwed up a couple of things, and I talk about that. I mean, we all make mistakes, but you know, you just have to laugh at some of them. But this is a combination, and it's comprehensive. It's a step-by-step compilation of the very academic orientation of, you know, when you're speaking in public, you have to have an introduction, a body, a conclusion, no matter what you're doing, even here. But the basics, I took those, and I took from things that I had taught in the academic world, and I took from things that I worked with executives on. So to me, it was a no-brainer. Just pushed everything together and see what comes out in the blender.
You know, as you're saying that, Gilda, I'm thinking, you know, how much your relationship work blends into this. Just because I was thinking of somebody who reported to me, and she just begged me, please never make me speak in front of people. Don't ever, ever, ever make me go on, you know, these meetings where they're going to put me on stage and will you present instead of, and I'm like, yeah, fine. And that was before everybody's now has to present on Zoom. I mean, you can't be in the back of the room. The camera is on you and people can print screen your face and send it to everybody. You know, I mean, it's just a whole different situation. Now I'm thinking of her, this would be really helpful to her because a lot of it for her, there's that mental, you don't want to have anybody see you sweat. You don't want to look bad.
You want to be confident.
Yeah. What do you tell somebody like her now that has to be on Zoom and some other?
I say it in the book.
Mm-hmm.
If you're worried about people seeing you sweat, give it up, because we all sweat. Mm-hmm. And laugh at it. I mean, I was doing a speech one day, and I was going through a divorce, and I was giving this speech, and I looked down, 2 identical shoes, but they had different colors. So, I mean, so you laugh at this and say, oh, look at my feet, everybody. And I called attention to it.
Yeah, you got to do it.
And that was the end. And I went on with what I had to say. You have to be very natural about this. And that's what even reality television, which is not reality at all because it's so highly edited and scripted, but reality television is a poke at getting things more real. And audiences want more real. They don't want all that phony baloney stuff that used to go over okay. It just doesn't work anymore.
So embrace the situation you're in, be yourself, but you can't just be doing those without preparation. You also have to prepare.
Oh, you know what? I have 3 words. When somebody calls me to do a television show, it's called just show up. But they have no idea how much preparation you do in advance. I used to do the daily talk shows that are no longer in existence. And people would come on with their relationship problems and blah, 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 blah. And Fox, 20th Century Fox, actually, did a pilot for the Dr. Gilda show. I had so much of a following, and so many people knew who I was and recognized me on the street and whatnot. And I mean, I would go to Puerto Rico, I would go to Canada, I would be recognized everywhere. And I knew after a while how to do television presentations. But that alone was just not enough for me. I also missed, and you know, I get that from Diane all the time. I missed not researching things and not finding out more. She, with her brilliant curiosity book, I mean, she has made me more curious.
Of course.
And I could see why. See, I take one thing and then I apply it to something else. And after reading her book, I recognized why I was not all that attracted to certain guys I was going out with. They weren't curious enough. And, you know, with each thing, I add that thing into my presentation. And I urge everybody to do the same thing. Just because you are living in this box as a manager of this little company doesn't mean that you don't have a life outside. And for years and years and years, we have been told, do not mix personal and professional. And coming from me, I say you have to mix personal and professional. If you are going through a divorce, if you are, you could be building a new house, you could have a flood in your home, you could have a baby that's very sick, you could have a dog that you're training. Everything that is you is still you, and the camera doesn't lie. The camera will see not what is happening in your life because it has no crystal ball, but it can see your emotions, and it can see when you're not 100% there.
True.
You know, that's such an interesting thing, because I'm thinking of someone I know who had a pretty traumatic thing happen to her in the last year, but she had to be on video all the time and everything had to go on as scheduled. And, you know, when she'd get on camera, all of a sudden she had to be, you know, rah, rah,
Different.
rah.
Yeah, exactly.
So is that realistic? I mean, how can we keep, yes, you said the camera doesn't lie. So if you have those bad days at work and you have to be in front of somebody like that, is it better to cancel? Is it better to call out the elephant in the room? What's the best way to deal with that?
Great question. I say go, do it, because every single camera appearance is not going to be magnificent.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days, you're going to have good hair days, you're going to have bad hair days. You're not going to like your clothes. The first time I was in television, I went home and threw out half my closet. I was wearing a beautiful designer suit, and it had these 3 buttons, and how it was televised, I looked like I was wearing a clown suit. So that had to go. You don't know these things until you're on and you see and you say, oh, no, I'm going to have to make adjustments. And once you're on television, you start making adjustments in the clothes that you wear. And I mean, you just know. And I say in the book, you don't want to put little prints on because the camera bleeds that and makes your eyes go wiggly. I mean, you have to know these things. Solid colors work the best, but not white. Black surprisingly works well, but if you know in advance you have a black background, you want to stay away from that. So how do you know what the background will be? Try to watch a show before you go on it, so you know what the background will be. Sometimes that's impossible, but now with the internet, it's more possible than it's ever been.
So they have to do their homework before they even book themselves.
There is no getting away from it. You can't go on without doing your homework. When I did Court TV, I was on Court TV for a number of years arguing with the lawyers. You know how many cases I had to read before I was even on. And I did this. I wasn't getting paid for it. I wasn't one of the lawyers. And it was just me. And I think I did some pretty good work on that network. But I had to put in hours reading through the cases before I commented. And my comments were always from the relationship perspective, which lawyers did not have.
You know, you bring up some interesting points, Gilda, because your book doesn't just talk about being on Zoom calls, and it doesn't talk about just being up on stage. I mean, you don't write about it, I should say. And it's all these things. It's all these different forms of communication, whether you're on a TV show, whether you're on a podcast, whether you're on whatever it is, when you're communicating, you're talking in different formats. And I think a lot of people had gotten comfortable doing one form or another because they had to talk to people in the office. Finally, they got over that problem of whatever those issues were. But, you know, that's just a snapshot in time. You go by somebody in the office. It's not that constant focus on you like there is in Zoom, or constant focus on you like if you're on a stage. And I think that's kind of the hard part for people, because all of a sudden it's a whole different level of attention. And it's different for introverts and extroverts. Do you differentiate what advice you give introverts versus extroverts?
Well, it's kind of interesting to see the studies that are coming out now. Men are starting to wear makeup thanks to Zoom. People have an increased rate of going to see their plastic surgeons thanks to Zoom. People are starting to be more concerned about what the top looks like and thinking that the bottom doesn't support the top. That's a very, very big disadvantage, because it all starts with feet to top of head. And it has to be supported somewhere. And if you think you're going to get away with just pajama bottoms, trust me, it shows in your delivery. I talk about how you talk from the diaphragm and not from from here. People have gotten away. Babies know how to speak diaphragmatically. When they start to speak, they know how to breathe diaphragmatically. Somehow we have gotten very lazy in how we communicate, and we get very throaty, and then we have sore throats because of it. Nodes and nodules start to develop in some people. I had a client, as I talked about in the book, who had this problem. And this is good for everybody, even if you're not doing a 9-to-5 kind of job which was once an office. But whatever it is, you are always on. And that's what has been very unnerving to a lot of people. You are always on. And there's the burnout rate has been just gigantic.
Tremendous, yeah.
People who have not realized that they're always on, and they always have to be on.
You mentioned some of the stories, and I went through the book, and in a few pages there's a story. These stories you write about, are those real stories or make believe that you're providing a description so there's a prescription?
No, I'm pretty creative, but I'm not that creative. I was fed these stories by different people, from different people I've worked with or whatever. Of course, I change names and I change identities. Yeah, these stories are real. These are real people. But this is no different from every single book I have written. I have written, this is my 18th book. Every single book draws from my experiences with the relationships I have known, people I have known, the people I have counseled, and the people I have learned from, because I always learn from the
It served you very well. So congratulations on that.
As you're saying that, they really say it's a great thing to use storytelling when you communicate, and Gilda's wonderful at that. And, one of the hardest things I think for people who are speakers is not only to come up with great stories. I've had a lot of people on my radio show say they just write down stories, but then they embellish them and make them seem even more exciting and grand and things to make it more funny, And I've taken horrible things I've done in sales to embarrass myself and use those, and people laugh, and that stuff's great. See, the hard part, I think, for a lot of people is the hook, to the beginning, to get people enticed enough to want to sit through let's say you're watching somebody on stage and they're giving this performance, and maybe they're not, super experienced, and they get up there and they do something kind of, cornball or something, what I mean? I've seen so many things. I'm so surprised by how many people go, yeah, I'm the best speaker. And I'll go, oh, really? And then I'll go look and I'll watch and I'll think, okay, maybe they aren't the best in my mind. You know what I mean? But I love that they have the confidence, but to be the best, you really have, I've had some Hall of Fame speakers on my show. They are right up there, right? And they're really great at the storytelling aspect, but they have this hook. They have like an organization of how they speak. So you talked about introduction, body, conclusion. Hit the introduction part. What is most important?
You have to have a hook. No matter what, you have to have a hook. And you don't have much time. 3 seconds to grab them, 5 seconds to hold them, and then they're out. Because I talk about the physiology of how people cannot sustain listening for any period of time. Everybody wants to be listened to at the greatest critical listening level, but that's not realistic. So being a really good speaker with a live audience means that you have to pay attention to what people are doing in front of you. And if they are dropping out and dropping off, nodding off, then you have to go after them. And it's not unusual for me to grab that mic off the lectern and to run into the audience and ask somebody, so what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And I got kicked off a television show one day because that was the host's job and I was just a guest and the doing it. So I wanted to, and the show was rated so tremendously. And yet what happened in the end was I was kicked off that show, but then the boss came and invited me into his office and he said, all I know is that when you're on air, people don't change the channel. Look, I could have been an ostrich. I could have been a pitcher of water. He didn't care. He didn't care what I looked like. He didn't care what I sounded like. He cared about his bottom line. And people have to understand that this is a business. This is not fun and games, but this is a business and you have to deliver the goods to somebody, whoever it is who is in charge. And he cared that people didn't change the channel. They have metrics. They can tell what time you come on because traditionally in the talk show world, they always have the guest therapist come in afterwards. At the end of the show, segment 5, maybe sometimes, but usually segment 6. And then there's there may be segment 7 or maybe not, but the host says hello and goodbye and that's the end of it. But you're just the dressing or the icing on the cake. And you have to recognize, like he did, that they don't change the channel. And because that business is all dependent upon the eyeballs that people have on you, then you have to deliver the goods to them. That's very important. You have to understand not only who your audience is, but you have to understand everything about that audience. And that's why one of the things that I offer is the audience analysis sheet that I give out. And that's deliberately set up for any audience that you have to speak to, whether it's your husband, whether it's your wife, whether it's your kids or some gigantic satellite program for which you're getting paid very well. It doesn't make a difference. You have to know their needs and hit their pain points.
You know the audience, you meet their needs, and that's it. You have a hooked audience.
And the hook for different people would be different all the time. And different audiences would be different all the time. People who try to tell jokes and are not funny very often fall flat on their face. And because that's the initial part where anybody sees you, either you're going to hook them right up front or they're going to say, what am I doing here? And that's very important to understand. Why should they listen to you? I mean, when you're preparing your speech, why should they listen to me? What do I have?
Gilda, how do you know if they're listening to you, if they got the camera out? How do you know they're not taking a picture of you or they're on their phone texting to somebody else? It used to be if they were on their phone, you'd be going, oh, they're not listening to me now, because they're doing something. You could pay attention, you could tell. But now they could be going, hey, this chick's the best. I'm going to put her on Twitter, right?
That may be the case, but then it's up to you. You see, people think, oh, you just get up and speak. It's the easiest job in the world. Mm-hmm. It's not so easy if you are doing your job properly and watching them at the same time that your train of thought is going in the line in which you have prepared it to go. Mm-hmm. So while you're thinking about this and this and this and this, and you're delivering that information and that very valuable content to which they came to hear, you're also observing that audience. And if that person is continually like this and like this and like this, and you never see that person, then you've lost the person. If the person is like this, occasionally looks up, gets some air, goes down, and then you haven't lost the person. And you have to be on your toes. And you may have to do this for 100 people sitting in front of you.
Let's say you have more than one person doing this. How do you engage them back? Do you create scenario? Yeah, more than one person looking the other way or looking down. They're not paying attention. How do you engage them?
Well, I often ask a question. I say, so what do you think about that? Or say something majorly controversial. This sends Diane over the edge.
I love it. No, I love it. I just wish I could do more of that. I just don't do that. Yeah. I get a kick out of her doing it, though.
I know,
I watched you on Joy Behar one night, and I was just laughing because everybody else is like, doing their thing. And then Gilda goes, but wait a minute. And she does some off the cuff thing, and I'm like, oh, that's the best, because she says what a lot of us are thinking, but we won't say,
I've heard that for years. Joy
Mhm.
Behar. Yeah, Joy Behar was fun. We did this one show with another comedian. It was Al Franken, actually. And she was doing a pilot for a week to see how it ran. And when she sat me down, she said, listen, I know you're funny, but look, there are only two funny people up here. Him and me, and you cannot be funny.
Oh, good luck.
Wow.
I did my natural personality. And some of it was funny. I mean, this is, because I was playing with them. I was bouncing off them. And that's what I love to do. I love to bounce off other people. To listen to one speech for any length of time, I mean, you really have to be captivating. And I can do that. I have done that. But I loved interacting with other people because it's much more fun.
Deep down, are you an introvert? Yes. Yes.
I wouldn't have called that question.
I would say she is. She just came out because I believe she was.
I have some introverted parts to my personality. That is true. I am shy sometimes. This is why I'm so glad people recognize me when I go out and they come over to me, because I'm a little shy about going out and introducing myself to other people. Now, Diane, she is amazing. I can turn my back. I can turn my back, and she has 15 people all around her. I don't have that ability all that.
I don't know about that, but I remember you told me you ran into Howard Stern after being on a show and you didn't bother him, and you said, I'm not going to go bother him while I see him on the street, and so she's very respectful of people. But I wouldn't call her. I would say I'm more introverted than she is. How about you, Abe? Are you introverted?
I believe I am an introvert as well. Yeah.
I think PhDs have to have some kind of introverted qualities to them because we study a lot, we research a lot. We're always looking for the answers under the next rock. And that takes alone time and perseverance and patience and all these kinds of things that extroverts go, oh, I don't have the time for that. I just want to get out there. And
but sometimes you become an extrovert because you're trying to camouflage the introvert part in you, or you're trying to get away from it.
It really is great, though. I know we hit around a lot, but Gilda is a genius and she plays it very coolly, but she's very, very well-read, and everything that she's done is just super. I mean, she's just been in every realm you could imagine when it comes to communication, and she shares everything in this book. And I think it's so helpful for anybody in the working world to read. It's for anybody who has to speak to anybody in any setting, basically.
Yes, it's not only for white collar, it's for everyone. You're right. I agree with that.
One of the things that I don't want to leave without making a very important point about is when we return to our small group interactions, our networking, and so on and so forth, one of the things that people purposely do, and they think they're doing this so well, is to start with, and this is who I am. I'm Dr. Gilda Carle, and this is what, and that's their monologue. And people who are listening, I mean, if you're paying attention, people, their eyes will roll and whatever. And I made a big distinction between going out there and putting on your monologue for people who are not going to be interested or not listening, and change that whole idea around to first have what I call an dialogue, dancing with the eyes between two people, dialogue, then have a dialogue, a dyad, meaning with the two people. Mono for one person is the last thing that comes into play. So the first thing is the dialogue. The second thing is the dialogue. So what do you think of the weather? How'd you get here? Oh, the snow was so awful and the roads were so slippery and And then when the two people have meeting of the minds and hearts and souls, then you say, so what do you do? And then they're primed to listen to you. And this is the most important skill. So it's dialogue, and monologue in that order, as opposed to how everybody else has been operating.
This your model. This is your model. This is
Well,
your
this is
own.
one of my models. This is one
What
of
I'm
the
saying is you're the one came up with
Oh,
it.
no, I developed that.
And
because I
Dr.
was sitting-
Diane, did you call her genius?
She
That's genius, isn't
it
it?
is genius.
My gosh.
Oh, thank you. It's not genius. I saw how people were interacting and how they were falling short. They were just blah, 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 blah. And the words were going nowhere because we are the worst listeners. We don't listen to anybody.
So how would you have the discipline though? You need to have a discipline to put this model in place. Do you practice it a lot? Do you read it? Do you put in theory? How do you put this theory into practice?
I walk my talk. I walk my talk with everything. When I wrote Don't Bet on the Prince, I mean, that was my first book and I got a huge advance for it. I was very well known on television by then.
It's wonderful. It's really wonderful. Dr. Diane, if you have any other question for Dr.
Well, I want to know if she has more books in her because I've never seen somebody write more books. What's the next thing?
I have another book.
What is it all about?
And of course, she says this to the curiosity expert and just leaves it there. And it is what?
I don't want to talk about it yet. I'm already starting to take notes.
Now I'm really curious.
Starting to observe and take notes, and let's see where it goes.
It was nice to see you. We're celebrating you. Dr. Diane, thank you for hosting.
Thank you for
Co-hosting.
having me as a
Thank you for
host. This was
co-hosting.
fun.
It was fun.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So the name of the book is Amplify Your Media Presence, Amplify Your Brand. The author is Dr. Gilda Carle. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me here. Thank you both.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.